Hello, hello. Welcome. I will call to order this meeting of the City of Boise's Public Works Commission. And I will start with a quick roll call. If you are here, please let me know. Commissioner Ellis, Commissioner Pagan,
Here.
Commissioner Wernz,
Here.
Commissioner Lockett, Commissioner Morgan, Commissioner Thornfeld.
Here.
All right, that makes quorum, so we can get going. I also want to recognize and thank Councilmember Nash for joining us at this meeting. Thank you for being here. First on our agenda is approval of our minutes from our last regular meeting on October the 1st of 2025. And with that, I would open up for a motion.
I move to approve the council meeting minutes.
We have a motion from Commissioner Pagan. Do we have a second?
I move to second.
We have a second from Commissioner Wernz. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. That brings us to our regular agenda items. And up first is the Community Climate Action Update. And with that, I will turn it over to staff.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. We're excited to present to you today on an update on the Community Climate Action Committee and what the results of the committee are and how we're going to move forward. A credit to staff. They've done amazing work. A lot of meetings, a lot of feedback, a lot of trying to process feedback into something that's actionable. And so we're excited to share with you today what the findings are. So I'll turn it over to staff and let them introduce themselves. Bree?
Thank you. My name is Bree Brush. I am situated in the mayor's office. I support climate and transportation policy. Really excited to be here with you today and kick this presentation off. I'll be joined by my two colleagues, Lindsay Mosier in the Office of Community Engagement and Alex Brooks in the Public Works Department on the Climate Action Team. I'll start with an overview of our project and how we have utilized a resident committee to support the work, go through the community engagement results, talk a little bit about the final deliverable that we are proposing, and those next steps. To take us into some background, our clean energy and climate goals as a city are twofold. Those goals that we've set as a municipality for electrification and carbon neutrality, those city operations tracking toward that, and then our community-wide goals, really asking our residents to play a role in advancing clean electricity within the community and carbon neutrality within the community. And we have made a lot of progress in those carbon neutrality goals and clean energy goals as a municipality, of which you have had a big part in and have had the most insight in. But what we really lacked is that way to involve the community in advancing climate action and giving them the tools and education they need to be able to help advance those 2035 and 2050 goals. So that's really where we started. You can see our 6 priorities areas listed here, which hopefully you are familiar with. I won't go through each of them, but I might call out just a couple that have had some really substantial community engagement and resident participation so far. Most notably, the buildings and energy section, thinking about 2,400 active solar arrays within the community installed since 2017. Waste and consumption, 97% of our residents participate in curbside compost. That's 30,000 pounds of waste diverted from the landfill annually. Newly established West Bench Farmers Market, really creating some strong food ecosystems for residents to participate in. And then our natural environment, the City of Trees would not be what it is without all of the efforts we've put into our tree planting programs. So sharing some of that progress here and in hopes that you can see where our starting place is with our community and with the residents. Here's the goal we started with, and I'm going to read it in full because I think it really highlights where we're going and what we hoped to achieve at the beginning of this. Work with the community to create a climate action guide that reflects what residents care about and how they choose to engage, supported by city staff. Our city staff supporting this team are those that I listed a little bit earlier at the beginning. Our core team was really interdepartmental, myself in the mayor's office, public works, and community engagement. And then we were advised by an interdepartmental team that included our planning and development services team and the Parks and Recreation Department, both playing really key roles in how climate action can be facilitated with residents and in our growing community. Next, I'll hand it over to Lindsay and she'll talk about our committee.
Thanks, Bree. As a reminder, my name is Lindsay Mosier. I'm our Public Engagement Senior Manager in the Office of Community Engagement. So the first thing that we wanted to do was create a committee, and we wanted this to be a wide range of members of our community. We didn't want everybody to be super specific on having a climate action background necessarily. We had a really great turnout for folks that wanted to be involved, over 194 applications. We ended up choosing 23 of those with, like I said, a variety of backgrounds. The expectation from the committee, we met monthly and continue to meet monthly. We have 2 more meetings left that really helped us as a sounding board as we did engagement throughout the year. They have met monthly. Their role is really to provide community-driven insights and help us define and guide what our final deliverable would be. We walked them through all the 7 priority areas, what that looks like from a city lens, what that looks like from a resident lens, and what they felt connected to and unconnected to as well. We did some broad community engagement that was February through April. We did a citywide survey that had over 1,900 respondents, which is great. And we also did just open kind of community conversations, which some of you have attended, which really asked residents, what are you most connected to out of our climate action priorities? What are you least connected to? And what types of tools do you need to feel like you can take more climate action? Really, the whole point was for us to get feedback on folks want to be engaged, but they just don't know how, and help us get there and understand what you need to take more climate action. Our key takeaways from the survey and working with our committee and the community conversations was some type of monthly or quarterly events and challenges. Flexible entry points. We don't want anyone to necessarily feel like there's a barrier. You might compost. We have a great participation in compost, and you want to learn how to do more, but not feel afraid of like, well, I don't know that much about climate action, but provide an easy entry point for them. Looking for super specific actions and localized events. We had explored using external or some other cities around the country that have used external resources. They were great. However, they were not Boise specific. It was kind of the platform is what it is. And what we heard is we really wanted to be Boise specific. Some type of recognition and incentive structure, meaning gamification, which kind of goes into some of the quarterly challenges that we've heard about. A centralized hub for resources. What we heard is that it's very confusing to try and take action when you could follow Sierra Club or some of our other partners and not have a centralized location of here's the events that are going on, here are the ways that I can get involved, and here are the actions that I can do, from some with some monetary to little to no monetary to larger that can be installing solar or purchasing an EV, et cetera. And last is future personalization and metrics tracking capabilities. We want to be able to track not only, you know, how are we reaching our carbon neutrality goals, but also what's the participation of this program as well. So I'm going to pause there. That's kind of got us to where we're at before we kind of talk about next steps.
Any questions or comments from the commission? Commissioner Thornfeld.
Thank you, Chair. So I was wondering with the group of people that you set up, the 23.
Yep.
What were the age demographics, if you know, because I like being a member of Gen Z and I know millennials, like the world that we're creating now is going to be the world that we're going to be raising children, grandchildren in. You know, we have more of a future with what we're doing.
Yeah.
So I know that a lot of the time millennials and Gen Z are very passionate about stuff like this. So I was wondering if you had more like what the age demographics were.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you specifically. I can tell you what I know. We were very intentional about the type of folks that we chose and the range and also where they're located. We wanted to make sure we had wide representation. So we made sure we were pretty much equal between council districts. Age, we do have someone that's in high school. That's a good representation. We do have several millennial, and also I would say we cover the broad spectrum. Also in our survey that we did, we heard from the younger generation that feel the need more right now versus the older generation that can say, oh, I want to impact, or I want to hear about when it's the air quality is poor, et cetera. So just hearing from the difference of age demographics, helping guide kind of what we are creating from here. So does that answer, hopefully? Great.
Other questions, comments? All right, hearing none.
Cool.
Back to you.
I'm going to hand it over to Alex, who's going to take us through kind of where we go from here.
Hi, I'm gonna raise this up. I'm Alex Brooks. I work on the Climate Action Division in Public Works, and I get to present the fun stuff. So this is what we're doing going forward. So getting all that feedback from the committee and the community, we landed on creating an entirely new program. But within that program, we're highlighting things that already exist, amplifying programs that are already happening. So the title of the program is Keep Boise Cool, and that's going to be the umbrella of programming, our website. That's going to be our central hub for all those resources that Lindsay was talking about. And then we'll be coming out with a marketing campaign in January to launch this program. And so within the programming, there'll be events, there'll be challenges, basically trying to materialize all that feedback that we heard from our committee. And so our website will be launching in January. And one of the features of that is that the first thing you'll see when you get to the website is you'll be able to make an individualized climate action plan. So that'll be based on some demographic questions. Are you a renter? Are you a student? Do you live with your family? Do you drive a car? And so based on those types of questions, it will come out with a personalized action plan with some actions you can take in the moment, the next day, and they will be scaled out by low barrier, so no cost to little cost, and then a little bit of a step it up action. If you know you already use your blue bin successfully, what's next when it comes to waste reduction, as an example. And then we're splitting up the programming into quarterly themes. And so we're using those climate priority areas as our guide. Here's what our plan is for this fiscal year. So October through December, which is right now, we're working really closely with the Curbit team to pilot some waste and consumption programming. Then when the launch of the new program happens in January, we'll be focusing on water. And then in the spring, we'll switch to transportation. And then in the fall, we'll switch to buildings and energy. And so within each of those quarters, we'll be highlighting programs that already happen in the community, because there's so much that already does happen with all of our great community partners. But we'll be introducing some new programs as well. And then we are plugging into the neighborhood investment grants as well. They are themed around transportation for the upcoming year. And so our climate action team member that focuses on transportation is helping the neighborhood associations include climate action in their grant proposals. So with that all being said, and the program is already launching in a pilot phase, our purpose and goals are really to inspire individual climate action. We're not necessarily asking more of community members, but we want to figure out what does the community want to do and how can we lower barriers or offer resources to enable that action to happen. And we want to support the goals that are in the climate action roadmap. We want to create a unifying message. There's been lots of opportunities to do climate action in different departments with different community partners, but we really want to create this umbrella program to put all of those programs underneath. And then we want to measure participation and hopefully see some behavior change. So we want to be able to measure the impact of this program. So what we are looking for from the commission, like I said, this program is very much living and changing and moving. And so we're in a pilot stage right now, but we're still open to comments and feedback and ideas. And so I really wanted to put it back on all of you to provide that input to us as we move forward and launch this program in January.
Thank you. I will open it up for any reactions, comments, feedback, or ideas. Anyone want to start off? Commissioner Pagan?
Thank you, Chair. I'm curious to know if you are working at all with any like big corporations, Micron or anything like that, to maybe do some sort of work with them programming wise, or encouraging them to help with this climate action plan, because we do have quite a few big corporations coming into the area. Yeah, a couple of ways that we engage with businesses. The Climate Action Division hosts an Idaho Sustainability Directors group. And so that is business leaders from Albertsons, Micron, St. Luke's, HP, Boise School District, BSU. And so kind of a lot of heavy hitters in the community come to this group quarterly and share what they're doing about sustainability. And then we offer resources as much as possible. And we have pretty good working relationships with those organizations. Another opportunity that Micron just took advantage of is the Curbit Awards. So that's a waste reduction recognition program. And as part of Keep Boise Cool, we will be in December highlighting those businesses and celebrating those businesses that have taken part in year one of the Curbit Awards. And then we will be inviting some key partners that we see as businesses that might want to be involved in more sustainability programs to that event to try to engage them in what's coming up. So right now our business sustainability program is mainly within waste reduction actions is how we're recognizing businesses, but we hope to expand that to other sustainable actions in the future.
Other comments, reactions? Commissioner Thornfelt?
Thank you, Chair. How are you guys, I might not have caught it, but how are you guys planning on, spreading the word about this? Because this is such a great opportunity. Like, I feel so cool being on the up and up about it. It's so fun. But, how are you going to get this out to the general population?
I'll have Lindsay come up and talk about that.
Great question, Commissioner. Within our Office of Community Engagement, we're using this as an opportunity for twofold. Number one, like a marketing and communications, like do we do bus wraps, et cetera, really driving people to our centralized hub. Number two, the programming and engagement. What does that look like? Working with the, I'm going to misspeak, but the green team that works with like the Boise school districts, et cetera. Some of our key partners, we want to make sure, we've had previous experiences when we kind of give the tools to some of our partner organizations and they're the messengers, which is one way to do it. And then two, what are the resources that we have through schools going to where folks are and kind of grassroots engagement as well.
I have one thing to add to that as well. So like Lindsay said, our committee is wrapping up at the end of this year. And I know the Climate Action Division does not engage with you all very often, but I think going into the next year, one of our goals would be to update you all on our work more often so that we do have that connection to the community once our committee is wrapped up. If that's something that you all would be interested in, hearing more updates on the work that Climate Action is doing.
So, I would love a little help sort of understanding the individual climate action plans a little bit more and how they situate in sort of the broader suite of public engagement, community engagement, and sort of strategic action related to the climate action plan. Yeah, just anything to help me configure where it's at.
Sure. I'm going to take a stab at this and anybody can fill in. Essentially, the Climate Action Roadmap does give us some individual actions, right? Now, whether or not we have told people how to do it or why it's important is something that we really felt was important and that we heard from the committee. So within the individual climate action, each of those actions align with the climate action or with the Climate Action Roadmap and also some other things to consider that we the project team that we had was awesome of thinking of co-benefits. Like we think of housing, right? More densive housing means that we are using our resources wisely, where our transportation options are more efficient. Can one of those be go talk to your legislator or to your city council and, say that you want this pathway created XYZ. So really thinking of a broad depth of what those actions can be to align to get us closer to our goals. Anything else?
And I think you all probably know there are hundreds of ways to act sustainably in our community. Not every action is right for every person. And so when we get that key demographic info from someone, we can give them more personalized actions that will fit with their lifestyle because we want this to be really inclusive and equitable and accessible. And then the other part of the individualized action plan is that we will be providing resources. So say it says, change your light bulbs to LEDs. Here's a link on how to do that. And so not just giving a list of actions and saying, all right, you got it, but then providing additional resources to actually enable those actions. And the hope is too with the programming and the on the ground work that those will help enable some of those actions. So if something comes up like ride an e-bike instead of taking your car, maybe a future program we could offer is e-bike incentives to the community. So
yeah, I would just add, Chair, to the good answers that were provided. in the climate action roadmap, there is that like these, the goals are not an abstraction. Like we have it mapped out on how many rooftop solars projects need to be added, how many EVs need to be purchased, et cetera. And then we have a glide path down to 2050. So part of what the team is trying to figure out is how do you get folks engaged on the various steps that we have programmed in the climate action roadmap. Not everybody can do all of them. So to Alex's point, how can you customize what you can do? And then on our end, we can start to see what's happening and, oh, we're behind on X initiative. We need to pick it up, or we can make it up over here in this initiative. And so taking that information to be able to process that to see how we're progressing.
Yeah. And I'm asking because I understand that it's sort of a pilot effort and we don't quite have like the full like measured outcomes quite yet. It's just sort of a goal that we're setting, but I'm curious about interrogating the utility of driving individual action versus other areas of action that we can sort of take on policy levels or on business engagement levels, on activating other community partners as a part of the whole suite. I imagine it's going to be an all of the above approach, but just trying to sort of understand the ROI on investing in an individual plan versus the outcomes when similar efforts spent otherwise might have a different kind of outcome.
Yes, we fully recognize that individual community members will only be able to get us so much closer to our goals. But really what we've heard, with those over 200 applications to our committee from our committee members is that they want to take action and they're looking for resources on how to do so. So like I said, we're not necessarily asking them to do more, but asking them what's keeping you from doing the things that you want to do.
Awesome. Thank you. I'll continue to interrogate as we do move forward on here. And don't take my skepticism as any sort of lack of support. It's just wanting to shape it most effectively. Any other comments or ideas from, yes, Councilmember Corliss?
Yeah, Chair, thank you so much. This is great. I love the idea of an individualized plan where someone can plug in what they can do, and we're providing them with resources on from zero cost all the way up to probably place solar on the top of your house. I wonder, a couple of things I'm curious about is, do we have a way we're going to track that? Do we have an app that people can go on and track that information?
No, we looked into some kind of pre-boxed app options. There are a lot of, sustainability action tracking apps. And what we heard from our committee is that they really wanted it to be personalized and very Boise. And we found that the pre-boxed versions were not really fulfilling what we thought we needed. So right now we won't have a way to track actions, but through our different programs, we will, track participation, track engagement. And so, and each quarter, as we're looking at different priority areas, we're finding ways to measure and track success.
Right. I think even if we can look at having people log it in somewhere, I think about the Elaine Plague City Trees Challenge, and they kind of go back and ask like, hey, did you plant that tree and where's it at? Even have some feedback and tracking mechanism. And then kind of along with that too, is I wonder, have we set out some goals of like, we want this many people to start participating? And you're shaking your head, so I think that's already there.
I was just going to say, our launch is still January. Us as staff are trying to determine what are those goals, participation, and there are some tangible things that we can track. If we do a challenge focused in May on transportation, we have some sort of challenge around transportation using the bus system, like we are able to track some of those numbers through our partnership. So, just depends on some of the challenges and what we want those to look like. So.
Speaking of those challenges, if I may, are we looking at individual challenges or different or against one another, or different parts of the city or different neighborhood associations?
Yeah, mostly individual, I would say. We have talked about as a collective. There are some other opportunities we've talked about on the neighborhood level as well. And just one other plug that I don't think I mentioned earlier is Nicole, who's our Energize Our Neighborhoods program manager, already has the neighborhood investment program. It's been focused on transportation over the last couple of years, just given kind of the current light and some recent deaths that we've had in the community. We're adding a climate lens this year because we heard from the committee, how do we do this on the neighborhood level? There's the individual, there's your neighborhood, and then there's citywide. And we said, well, we already have the tool and the mechanism to do so. We just have to make sure that neighborhoods know what to do and how to look for. So Nicole's done a really great job of plugging in our climate action team. So a neighborhood can apply for a $50,000 grant that could do XYZ in their neighborhood as well. So
Awesome.
That's great. And share one more thing. And just along those lines too, I would encourage, and I'm sure she does a great job, is to also encourage those neighborhood associations to share out this information as they have meetings, newsletters at their and events that they can share that, help us share that out to the community as well. Yeah, great. Thank you.
Yeah, love the idea of a neighborhood competition. Maybe we could get our neighborhoods to do something like instead of an ice bucket challenge, we'll do a compost bucket challenge, and it would be really gross. Cool. And then in the spirit of no bad ideas in a brainstorm, I'm sure it's already part of the conversation, but I know that the Boise State University's new Office of Community Engagement is serving as a hub to help connect organizations like the city with ways to track and measure new, emerging, exciting pilot projects and offer similar data capacity as maybe one more option to explore and build out our understanding of these options as we do move forward. Any other thoughts from the commission before heading? Commissioner Pagan.
Thanks, Chair. Just kind of getting back to the tracking question that Council Member Corliss brought up. I'm just curious, would we be able to not necessarily track on individual, but kind of look at the change citywide of people who might be taking their own climate action plan and just kind of tracking it that way in the sense of like, we have 200 people who signed up, and then you kind of see the change in maybe the energy demand or whatever it is. And then I would suggest putting that somewhere, maybe even in City Hall, where people could come and see that information in a public way that encourages people to kind of continue doing that. I think it's the power of having that information out and shown to people is really important. Especially people who might just be walking by and just kind of be inspired by something that they see in that information.
Yes, I would say historically, the Climate Action Division has not done a great job of sharing successes. So that's definitely a goal of this program, is to be able to share more of that information going forward.
And I would just add, Chair and Commissioner, we have a Clean City Index that we established back, I want to say 2 or 3 years ago. It has about 35 different metrics that we track, things like energy burden, tree canopy, et cetera. So just thinking about that feedback, I'm wondering if we could correlate over time some of those data sets to update to be able to say, I wonder if some of the individual climate action plans are affecting some of these metrics. So I made a note of it here. Thank you.
Awesome. Any final thoughts before moving on?
And I wanted to share an example of one of our incentive programs that's active right now. So we're working with the Curb It team. We created a bingo card that has 20 some actions that community members can take. They're at different levels of very, very easy with no cost to, if you already are a recycling pro, here's your next step. And then once you fill out your card, you can submit it and you're entered to win a zero waste kit, which will have items that will enable you to reduce your waste in your home. So I'm going to hand these out to you all to have an example. You can either use it or give it to a friend. But this is our incentive program for the first quarter. So thank you.
Yeah, and just in closing, just can't say enough about the staff and the work that's gone into where we're landing at currently. A big kind of area we wanted to improve on was getting the community more engaged in climate action. And so this is a really exciting development. So thanks to staff.
Awesome. Thank you. And with that, I think that takes us to the next item on our regular agenda, which is legal training, part 2. And I will turn it over to staff.
Thank you, Chair. And Mary Grant is back to provide legal training. And it is related to an item that's going to be before the commission here in the next month, I believe, an appeal. So we're going to walk through some of the appeal process in addition to other things. Mary.
Yes, back sooner than you all expected me to be. We do have an appeal that is going to be coming before the commission, the first in several years. So hence the reason I'm here to provide this as kind of a timely training. Please feel free to interrupt and ask any questions as we're going along. You certainly don't have to wait until the end. And I'm just going to kind of start off with a little bit of a disclaimer that my role today is really just to walk you through what that procedure is going to look like and what our obligation is as a commission to the different parties involved, i.e. the city and then the party with the property. I'm not going to be providing substantive responses or answers or interpretation here at this training. Staff really are the subject matter experts with respect to what our code says and the interpretation with respect to that code. So that will be coming from staff at the time of appeal, not today in any kind of substantive manner. So just to sort of set that up.
Mary,
Yes.
will you tell us how to vote like you do during city council meetings too?
100%. Yeah.
Okay.
You just, roll your chair back to me. Just kidding.
For the
Thank you,
record, that was
Council President
sarcasm.
Nash. Thank you, Council President. All right, so just a quick reminder of where we were. For the part 1 of training, we kind of covered the Public Works Commission authority and various obligations of the commission, the law and procedure for meetings, and then the role that legal plays with supporting Public Works Department and the Public Works Commission. Today, we're going to be going over decisions on appeal and due process. So I want to start with, again, kind of rooting us back to where the authority for appeals comes from. For a Public Works Commission, the appeals can come before this body from several different contexts. So we have appeals provided with respect to our irrigation system, with respect to sewer, with respect to solid waste, pretreatment, and stormwater. Any one of those decisions by Public Works staff that a person feels affected by or aggrieved by can appeal that decision of staff here to this body. The one kind of outlier to that are geothermal appeals. Per our city code, for whatever reason, and I don't know the history of this, any appeals about a geothermal decision go directly from Public Works staff to City Council and bypasses this particular group. So you won't ever see a geothermal appeal. In general, as far as procedures for appeal, the appeal request must be in writing. In terms of how we adopt writings now, emails are fine, texts are fine, really anything that provides that in writing. A notice of hearing is required. So what the parties will be getting, both staff and both the appellant in the matter coming before the commission, we will provide them notice of when that hearing is going to occur. I believe at this time it is anticipated that will be December 5th. The notice of hearing will confirm the date and time for that. The standard is always dependent on the context. We'll get more into that when we talk about how to conduct the appeal, but generally speaking, there's either a review that requires finding error, or there's what's called a de novo review, which is basically you get to start from scratch and make the decision as though no prior decision had been made. So those are the two. We'll talk more about that in a minute. On an appeal, there are various options for the commission. You can grant the appeal, which actually reverses the decision below. You can deny the appeal, which affirms the decision below, or you can partially grant, partially deny, and modify the decision that has been made. So you have those three options. We'll talk about a fourth option, which is a deferral. It's not usual and not one that we would necessarily recommend from a procedural standpoint, but we will cover what a deferral looks like. In terms of just high level, the decision on appeal, it needs to be supported, a supported decision. That's really what it is. It's about making sure that there is a record to support the decision that's being made. You utilize the applicable criteria and standards that are relevant to the particular context and the circumstance. You need to identify and discuss the relevant facts. Talk about the rationale for what facts matter, what facts don't. Look at the specific facts, apply them to the criteria, and kind of draw those connections in terms of developing your record. You will be receiving two different memos, or we anticipate you'll be receiving two different memos ahead of the appeal. One would be a staff memo that covers staff position. One would be an appeal or a memo from the appellant and covering their position. If you do affirm the decision of staff, meaning you didn't want to deny the appeal, that staff report really is your reasoned statement. It will provide probably a lot of the analysis that you as a commission could adopt to support that decision. Alternatively, if you opt to decide not to go with staff and to reverse that decision and grant the appeal. You could utilize any reasoned decision or statement that would be in that appellant's memo. And so you may not have to start from scratch, but if you all are making a decision that's somewhere in between or for a reason different than what is stated in either of those memos, you're kind of starting from scratch and you need to make sure that the basis for any decision really is put on the record in deliberation. It seems obvious, but I'm going to take the time to point out that conclusions are not sufficient. So saying we are denying the appeal because it fails to meet applicable criteria and code is conclusory, right? It doesn't give us the why. It doesn't tell us what criteria are not met. It really is just that conclusion. So it needs to be something more than that. These are just, again, kind of quick highlights. Make sure you make a record to support the decision. Be specific. Use very specific details and tie them together, draw those conclusions or those connections. All right, I'm going to skip over this first part because we've already covered it, but with respect to how a particular matter can move through various stages of appeal. Starts with a staff's decision. It can then be appealed to Public Works Commission. The Public Works Commission decision can be appealed by either city or the appellant to City Council. And then if they still don't like the decision, whatever party that happens to be, then they can petition for judicial review and actually take it into a court. And the court then reviews how that decision is. Generally speaking, the decision before this governing body would be the basis for that judicial review. So the role that council would play in any kind of review of this appellate decision really is fairly limited. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about standard of reviews. But generally speaking, it's not to add pressure to you all, but that this would be kind of the highlight, right, of the appeal process, regardless of how far it goes. With respect to the standard of review, so we talked about that where there's generally 2 on appeal. We can get a lot more nuanced, but for purposes of this training, we're just going to cover that error standard of review and the de novo standard of review. So error requires that the governing body hearing the appeal finds an error in the decision below. So they're looking at what happened before, what kind of facts were included, how those were applied, and whether or not it was applied correctly. A de novo review is that it's as though no prior decision has been made and you guys are making that decision for the first time. So you're not tied to the facts that were relevant for the Public Works staff decision. You're not tied to anything else. We're going to ignore de novo review. So that's just so you all know what it is, and come back to that our code is not absolutely explicit, but it does suggest that our appellate review requires finding error. So there are various ways that this council could, or this commission, excuse me, could find a basis for error. And those would be, and we will provide these to you again, so you don't have to memorize them, would be for some reason, our code is a violation of state or federal law, right? Like somehow our city council didn't get it right and we have passed a law that's not constitutional. The second would be that Public Works staff exceeded their statutory authority. So there's certain authorizations they have under city code, but they went beyond that in a way that wasn't rational or reasonable. Unlawful procedure. So again, that's why we're talking about procedure today, is that, you know, everybody gets the opportunity to walk this through every one of the steps. And if staff were to deny one of those steps or to only provide it to one party or the other, that could be unlawful procedure. Next would be if it's arbitrary and capricious. Arbitrary means essentially it's without any kind of rational basis. There wasn't really anything in the record to support how the decision was made, or it's in disregard of those facts and circumstances that were presented. And the last is not supported by substantial evidence. That's different than rational basis, because rational basis just says, you know, that based on what there is in the record, we can find this connection and it's reasonable. Not supported by substantial evidence is if you have a lot of conflicting evidence and you make a decision on one basis that it just doesn't seem like it really weighs in that favor and there's not something, again, substantial or adequate to support the decision, that would be where you'd find an error of not supported by substantial evidence. So we're going to talk about due process. Again, this is kind of the purpose behind the entire appeal process, is to provide due process. It's a constitutional right. Every government action, whether it's city, state, local, federal, whatever, has to provide due process to a person that is affected by a decision of a government. Really, at its most minimal and distilled to its simplest form, due process is notice and opportunity to be heard. That's it, right? And how we provide that notice and what kind of opportunity to be heard can be determined by the certain specific facts and context of the matter. But really, that's what it comes down to. There are some considerations in how to protect due process, especially when you're deciding a matter that is particular to one interested party. So if we're talking about something that's legislative or something that's policy driven, it really is something more broadly reaching. It's applicable to anybody and everybody. It's more in a sense of how we want to, as a government agency, direct and guide our actions with respect to any circumstance. When you're talking about a quasi-judicial decision, it is a decision that is based on how that law or procedure or guideline is being applied to a specific party with particular facts and circumstances, and your decision is going to affect the outcome for that particular party. So almost like you're sitting a little bit like a judge and or a jury, or both. And so you're making that decision in a quasi-judicial fashion. When you are making that kind of a quasi-judicial decision, the ways you have to act to protect due process are to avoid ex parte communications, facts outside the record, conflicts of interest, and you have to provide fairness in the hearing procedures. So we'll go over what each one of those are. For ex parte communications, once there's awareness of an appeal that is going to be pending, any communications regarding that pending matter need to be made with all interested parties. So if we call it the dangling conversation, so to speak, is that if there's any communication on the substance of that matter between an interested party and a member of this governing body, outside that presence of the other party, that's going to be an ex parte communication. There are ways to cure this, right? That means that you have to disclose that ex parte communication happened, make sure every party, what the substance of that communication was, and make sure every party has an opportunity to the same access to that information. So essentially disclosure, right? That's the way you can generally cure ex parte communications. And certainly not something you want to pursue, but if it happens, which it does sometimes, that somebody approaches you all, there are ways to be able to address it. Facts outside the record is another one. So and this goes also to fairness, that you want to make a decision based on this closed record, right? And everybody working off of the same basis, same foundation, same information, so that decision is made weighing all the, every commissioner is weighing the same evidence in order to make that decision. When there are reliance on facts outside the record, it can affect due process because then the parties don't have an opportunity to respond to what that fact is, right? And so there are ways that this can come in that might be a little bit surprising. All of us are kind of inclined to, when something comes up, we're like, let's go type it into Google Earth. I want to see what this looks like and where this property is and where it's adjacent to. That's a fact outside the record, right? Because now all of a sudden you're getting information from that map or that website that may not be available to everybody else. Easy to do, right? If you have personal knowledge, like if you live nearby the site that happens to be subject of an appeal and you drive by every day and you know that XYZ was happening with construction or there's other problems or whatever else, those are facts outside the record also because you've observed that. And if you're relying on any of those facts to make your decision, you would want to disclose those. So the other way that this can sneak up is when new facts are introduced in deliberations. So we'll talk kind of through what the actual hearing will look like. But once the hearing is closed and the matter is before the commission, you all deliberate. You get to discuss, you get to talk, you get to make motions, however you want to proceed in that manner. And if somebody else brings up, oh, and by the way, I drive by this place and I saw XYZ, all of a sudden you're introducing a new fact, and it's at a time when the parties no longer have an opportunity to rebut the information or to address it. And so we just want to make sure that if there are facts outside the record, that that is disclosed while the hearing is still pending and when both staff and the other interested party have an opportunity to address whatever that is. I'm emphasizing that. Don't make those new observations and deliberations. If for whatever reason that did happen, we can talk through with the chair on how to reopen the hearing. Again, it's very rare that some error in procedure can't be corrected, but we'll just talk through that if it comes up. We already covered conflict of interest in the first part of the training. So I'm just going to real briefly go back over this. That there's either an actual or an apparent conflict of interest. An actual would be if somehow you making the decision is going to benefit you or affect you monetarily from a financial perspective. You or any kind of close family member or a business, which one of you are a member or owner of. The apparent is a little less obvious, a little more nuanced, where it's, again, if you are a neighbor of this person, or if you know the attorney that represents, you're good friends with the attorney that represents the other party or something of that nature, where there's not an actual conflict of interest, but it may call into question your objectivity, then we would want to have a conversation about that before the hearing and discuss whether or not it's something that is kind of minimal, it's not going to be that big of a deal, and you just disclose on the record and still participate, or whether it would be an apparent conflict to where you may want to recuse yourself. Fairness in hearing procedures is really what it sounds like, just making sure you provide whatever opportunity you provide to one party, you provide to all of them. So that's the opportunity to rebut new information. That's making sure that the decision is based on code, because each person has a way to anchor back to code and not something else that's arbitrary. And this is where I want to talk about deferral. So we talked about the different ways an appeal can be decided. You can deny the appeal, affirming decision of staff. You can grant the appeal, reversing that lower decision, or you can partially do either and modify. If this body really felt like there was insufficient information on which to make a decision, you could consider a deferral. It would not be an ideal option, and generally it should only be deferred if the appealing party is requesting that deferral. And even if it is requested, this commission does not have to grant a deferral. All that really means is we're deferring the decision. We're not going to make it today. We're going to set it to a different date certain. Whatever information feels like it's missing needs to be provided to the commission during that time, and then we will make a decision on that later date. We don't anticipate that coming up, but in the event it does, I want you to be aware. We already covered that. And I'm going to skip that. This is about ballot elections, so we don't need to go there. The next thing I want to provide is just to show you where you can find Boise City Code and kind of walk you through the structure of the sewer use regulations. So you kind of understand the structure, that if you want to go familiarize yourself with a little bit more of those areas of law, that we can go ahead and do that. So I'm working on support on how to pull up the live website. So give me just a moment and then we will come back. Any questions in the meantime, please feel free.
Any questions from the commission right away? Commissioner Wertz.
Yeah, thanks, Mary. Can you talk a little bit about how the procedure would go? The actual meeting or that portion of the meeting, just sort of what we would be expecting.
Yeah, certainly. And we will ensure that this is provided in that notice of hearing. We can provide a copy of that notice of hearing to the commission also. But how we anticipate it going, I think some details are yet to be determined, but that each party would have the opportunity to provide that memo ahead of time, a written memo ahead of time, both on the same date and concurrently with one another. Those memos would be provided to Public Works Commission as a part of their agenda packet. So you all have the opportunity to review that prior to the actual hearing. Gives you a chance not to be put right on the spot, but really to have more opportunity to dig in and be prepared with some question and answers. Then at the actual hearing itself, Staff would present first. We anticipate probably the need for about a 10 to 15-minute timeframe for that presentation. It may be accompanied by a slide deck or a PowerPoint. After that, there would be the same amount of time provided to the appellant. They would get to present whatever they want in terms of a PowerPoint. Following each of those presentations, then it will go to question and answers. As many and as long as you all want to go, you can ask questions of either staff or of the appellant to get whatever information you all feel like you need to make a decision. Once the questions have been exhausted, then we will provide staff an opportunity for a rebuttal of about 5 minutes, and then the appellant gets to go last since it's their initiative that brought this before you all. They would get the same amount of, roughly speaking, about a 5-minute rebuttal. There should not be any question and answers or Q&A after the rebuttal. And then the hearing would be closed by the chair and the item would be put before the commission for deliberation. And then you all discuss how you would like to. And this can be a decision by the chair. It's kind of preference of the chair as to whether or not he would request a motion prior to discussion or whether discussion and deliberation can occur before a motion is made. So I'll leave it to you, Chair, to direct how you'd like that to happen at the hearing.
Yeah, follow up, Commissioner Wirtz.
Thank you, Chair. So when we go to the deliberation phase, is that a closed meeting at that point? Or
It's not.
Still, so it's everybody stays and
Yep.
listens to the commission deliberate.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
And that's kind of where the, kind of harkens back to a broader interest that has been expressed by state law, which is that the business of the public should happen in public. So that deliberation occurs on the record and needs to be supported. Yeah.
Other questions? Seeing none, I'll hand it back over to you to walk us through the website.
Okay. I'm going to go right here. There we go. All right. So I just wanted to show you all how and where you can find the Boise City Code to be able to look over what it is you want. From the City of Boise main website, you can come over here to departments. When you scroll down, it is here under City Clerk. So you just click on that. Maybe. There we go. And then from there, if you scroll down right here, Boise City Code. One more link, and it will take you to a third-party website that hosts the Boise City Code. The other way, if you want to skip through all that, you can Google it. You can just type in Boise City Code. It'll take you through some of the same steps, and you can get here that way. Over here to the left is where the sort of table of contents is. We are down here in Title 10. So you click on that. Scroll down a little bit further. Chapter 2 is the sewer use and regulations. So I'm going to go ahead and take us into that. Broadly speaking, I just want to talk about the structure a little bit, and then I'll direct you to a few places that if you want to familiarize yourself, you can go through that. From a broad perspective, we start with purpose and authority for why and how these regulations came about. We cover general provisions. There are regulations specific to industrial and commercial dischargers. We talk about connection requirements, the wastewater collection system, the authority for fees and how credits are offered, the actual fees and charges, fee deferral procedures, waivers and appeals, prohibitions, and then penalties and remedies. There are several of these sections that are not going to be applicable necessarily here. So trying to direct your attention to a few places that might be of more help and so that you all don't have to go hunting for them. If you were to review anything, I would direct your attention here to purpose and authority. This is just broadly speaking, the reasons behind why we have sewer use regulations. A lot of it is compliance with federal law. A lot of it is the protection of public health and safety. I would also direct you to applicability in terms of who is subject to the regulations. The next section that I think would be is useful for you all is to review the objectives. This kind of delves a little bit deeper into the why, not just the purpose, but kind of the objectives of why we have certain regulations and some of those categories. The next one I would direct your attention to is just if you're curious, I guess, this is where the Public Works Commission is actually directly called out in our sewer use regulations, and that it's here under section C, where it talks about how final decisions by Public Works can be appealed to Public Works Commission. The next one I would direct attention to would be just definitions. So quick little side note, in law school, when I was taking the administrative law class, which is not a required course, surprisingly, it should be. But the professor for that administrative law course, which was also the author of a book that's used nationally, so he's very well versed in administrative law. He very emphatically said the most important part of any code is the definition section. Start there. So if you're going to start anywhere, start there. It will define various things like the difference between an apartment, a condo, a service line, a tap, whatever else. It is kind of long. Some of them can probably be skipped because we're not going to be talking about particular contaminants or elements of discharge, right? So some of those you can use your discretion and skip, but it would be a useful section. The next one I wanted to direct your attention to is here. 10.2-4. This, just broadly speaking, talks about the connection requirements. And again, that's applicable to whomever, but it does provide a good basis for what the city is looking at in any type of request to connect. The next section that may be of use to you all is here in the 10.2.5, which talks about the wastewater collection system. Talks about service lines, requirements to connect, user responsibilities. So that one is a helpful section. It does start to get into more nitty gritty in terms of tap-ins, plugs, financing. Those are aspects that are not likely going to be a subject on the appeal. So it would be more the beginning of that section. And then the last part I wanted to direct your attention to is down here under section 9. We're almost there. Here we go. Waivers and appeals. So there are several bases upon which a particular property can request a waiver of some of these requirements, and then sort of the criteria that's considered, and then how an appeal is conducted under the sewer use regulations. So that's about all, just to make sure you guys aren't, like I said, chasing anything down a rabbit hole. So, and any additional questions, happy to answer.
Yeah, thanks for corralling our prep work. Any other questions from the commission? All right, seeing none. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chair.
Yeah. All right, I believe that brings us to the last item on our agenda, which is our commissioner forum. I'll turn it over to staff for any tee-up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I'll turn it back over to the commission to hear any feedback on things you're hearing in the community. But I wanted to share some news. We had this weekend on Saturday about 7 o'clock. We had an event at the West Boise facility where we got a power spike that caused the influent pumps to shut down. That's not a great thing. And so, long story, the power came back on very shortly thereafter, but the SCADA and the control systems were impacted. And so there was a misread. The SCADA was telling us that the pumps were on, they weren't. And so for about 2 hours, we had basically the pumps were off and we were backing up sewer into the system. And it came out at a manhole that was located just west of the facility. And so we had a pretty significant spill of raw effluent, about 130,000 gallons into the Thurman Mill drain. So our team worked through the night, Saturday night, to get the influent pumps back up and running, go out, clean the the drain in the areas that were impacted. Crews then went out Sunday morning, did sampling, and we found elevated levels of E. coli, as you can imagine. So at that point, we decided that let's go ahead and activate an incident management team. And so we had an emergency operations center virtually set up. And so for the past, what day are we on? Wednesday. It's been a long week. We've got situation reports being developed on a daily basis. We've got communications going out to that particular part of town. We've got specific objectives set around when we'll end the operation, but not great news. Can't say enough about the team, the utilities maintenance team, engineering team. They jumped on it and literally just worked through the night to make sure that we could get it secured. So at this point, we're going to continue sampling until we reach a specific objective of a certain fecal coliform count at 9 locations along the drain and at the mouth into the Boise River. When that'll happen, we're not 100% sure. There's a couple different options we're looking at to maybe flush the drain. Potentially a bactericide type substance could also be used, and we're looking at those options. I just wanted you to be aware of that because you may have seen it in the news. I didn't want you to be surprised by that. And we're to have a bunch of after action items that we're working on as we're going through the after action or going through the situation reports. There's different ideas that are coming up on how we can avoid this in the future. So kind of a parking lot of all the things that we'll be working on in the future to try to avoid anything like this in the future. So just wanted you to be aware of that, and I'll stand for any questions you might have.
Awesome. Thank you. If there's any way that that we can be useful, I'll at the very least volunteer myself if there's anything that any support that I can provide.
Appreciate that.
Any questions from the commission? Councilmember Corliss?
Chair, Steve, thanks so much. I have heard that in the news. So this report's really helpful. I'm just curious if you've had much feedback from the community in general.
No, we haven't, council member, we haven't had a lot of feedback. We haven't had many calls to the hotline because one of the things we were concerned about right off the bat was any basements that may have been flooded, and we didn't have any, at least that we're aware of, didn't have any of those instances, which was a huge relief. We've been out talking to community members up and down the drain. In fact, I just got a note from Haley that one of the community members was just really appreciative of our transparency and just saying, hey, we sort of make sure everybody's safe, pets are safe, etc. So no feedback per se, other than conversations we're having with folks along the drain.
Sure, just to follow up. And just a comment, I really appreciate you guys standing up an incident command system. I think that's the right move and be able to follow. I know it's a very rigorous process to digest that and who does the communication out and capturing those action items. So thank you for getting that stood up. No,
it's not really it was emergency response. They've been wonderful to work with. Rachel and Mallory they've been kind of just guiding us along how we do this on the incident commander. And they've just been awesome. It was their recommendation to stand it up. So I want to give them credit.
So thank you. Commissioner Wirtz?
Chair, thank you. Thanks for that update. Excuse me. I did have a question about kind of have you had a chance to kind of debrief on obviously what happened, but also the unexpected was that you thought those pumps were re-engaged after the power outage when in fact they weren't. So problem solving for the future, but also was it a surprise at all on the location for the discharge when the system backed up? Or is that something that you can do as a department more planning on to prevent if you did have a future incident where you'd know that was your low point?
Excuse me, Chair. Commissioner Lawrence, thank you for the question. The first part on this control system, yeah, definitely troubleshooting happening. Well, it happened in the incident, but then we are going back and now we're going to take a really large scrub on just, okay, the control systems, how are they impacted? Why were they misreading and telling us the pumps were on when they weren't? So yes, there'll be a thorough review of all of the control system for sure. To your question about was this what was expected once we had the backup? The answer is no. We had flanges set up on the manholes that were in the area, the low points by the drain, and one of the flanges failed. And so the result, what should have happened was sewage would have gone to the flange and been sent back to the dry well at the facility. Now, the indicators would have probably gone off that the dry well was being used, and that would have been a trigger for staff to say, oh, something's on it, something's not right, and get on top of that. Because that flange failed, it didn't give us those indications, so we had the sewage pop up at that manhole. So that's another thing that we're taking a look at is going back and in fact, crews were out on Monday, Monday and Tuesday going down. We replaced one of the gaskets on one of the flanges and going back and just doing inspections along all those manholes, those low point manholes. Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions from the commission? Any other unrelated comments, concerns, threats? Any further business to come before the commission? All right, hearing none, then I believe that wraps up our regular agenda. And with that, I will open the floor to a motion to adjourn. Nobody jumped too quick.
Chair, I move we adjourn the meeting today.
We have a motion from Commissioner Wernz. Do we have a second?
Chair, I second it.
We have a second from Commissioner Ellis. Thank you. Motion and second. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries and we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.